On the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there is having themselves a great day. No, this is not the four headless horsemen of the apocalypse. But this is what happens when you've got a troubled history that you'd like to rewrite. Say, for example, you are someone that has done some mischievous things in the past, and you get those moments in life where you have to fill out an application for a job, for example, and that dreaded question of, have you ever committed a felony or a misdemeanor comes up, and that instant kind of feeling that happens. And so many of us, if you're in that situation, wish that you could somehow figure out a way to change your past. Well, we're kind of at a place in the life right now of this country where the left is trying to rewrite history. Where the left was responsible for slave owners. So the Democrats were the slave owners. The Democrats were the party of the South. The Democrats were the Confederate Party. The Democrats were the ones that voted against the 15th Amendment to give black people the right to vote. The 56 or 54, I forget the number, votes against that amendment were all from the Confederacy / left / Democrat Party. The 19th Amendment was much the same. So what happens when a lot of the history of this world celebrates something that doesn't look favorably to you, and you keep trying to tell everybody, hey, I'm a good person, I'm a good person, I swear I'm a good person, but your history's so horrible, if people actually knew what you really had done, they might find it difficult to give you that benefit of doubt. Now, are you worthy of forgiveness? Yes, absolutely. Everyone is. Are you someone, though, that should not necessarily just be given trust, but should earn it? Well, I would say so for sure. Now, you might be wondering, where you just talking out your, your backside? Well, there's some stuff going on in the world that would suggest that maybe we've got some problems. One, about the rewriting history, so again, knocking down statues and everything else. But two, odd behaviors on the left that seem like they're really contradicting to the benefit of the country, to the benefit of mankind, to the benefit of people, to the benefit of people even of their own party. In fact, it seems in a lot of cases, the ends of the means, if you will, or the results that they hope to get are worth anything. If that means breaking laws, so be it. If that means rewriting laws so I can favor myself, so be it. If that means hurting people, so be it. So long as my case is winning, so long as my decisions, my desires are taken care of. What scares me in life sometimes is when someone considers themselves so righteous, so correct, that they know what's best for everyone regardless. Those are the times where it gets a little scary for me. And I don't trust either side necessarily to make a moral authority judgment and force me to behave a certain way. Now, fortunately, one side of this equation tends to favor freedom, tends to be the right, the patriots, people that have fought very hard for this country, that believe in what the American flag stands for. Not necessarily corporate America like so many think, or the capital letters America and all those silly things. No, but the actual ideology of a United States. Then you've got the other side of the equation where they want to govern what we make. They want to govern what we think. They want to govern what pronouns we're allowed to say and use. They want to govern who's correct and who's not. They want to govern which opinions you're allowed to have. They want to govern whether or not you're even allowed to have an opinion. God forbid you fall into a class or sex that's not protected. White male, for example, not protected, which again, I'm not asking for it, but certainly true that this is a group of people that cannot say, hey, but what about us? Well, yeah, we're kind of the scourge of the earth right now, aren't we? So again, if you're not part of that group, you tend to kind of get beat up on a little bit when you come at it from there. So we've got some very interesting cases where people are making decisions that are for our better good that seem to not fall in line with that. New Jersey governor, for example. I mean, he's been in the news, the hot seat, him and 4 other governors, right? New Jersey, New York, California, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. These governors made declarations to put people into dangerous situations And when the Republican members of the House try to get answers from these people, it seems that that's not happening very easily. So we're going to have a little information coming up on that. But one thing that's interesting to start with, and I kind of found this through some just researching on the Q board, this link came up, but the New Jersey Attorney General charges local politicians in mail voter fraud case. And what's really interesting, I think this is the part down here. Yeah, these guys. So Peterson, 1st Ward Councilman Michael Jackson, interestingly, along with 3rd Ward Councilman-elect Alex Mendez, were charged with 2 other individuals in this case. The charges ranged from the unauthorized possession of ballots to election fraud to falsifying or tampering with records to tampering with public records. They were in possession of fake ballots. Now, everyone's been trying to say Trump's making this up. There's no evidence. There's no evidence. I think, as some of us have suggested, especially with 5D chess, they always give him too much credit for. But here's a case where he was coming out with something that we all knew was going to get some bad traction. And here it is, in fact, that there's an attorney general right now in New Jersey that just charged individuals with fraud along the lines of elections and fake ballots. Now, many could say, are people on the right making a case for why we shouldn't have mail-in ballots? Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's exactly what's happening. And the people on the left that are saying, but this and that and this and that and shiny sparklies from the sun come down and that's why we should not have to, right? Like, they're coming up with all sorts of crazy, and it doesn't seem to work out very well. One example, kind of similar, post 4529 where we left off. Got a great little Twitter post here. It's awesome. But did the orders that are happening from these mayors, these 5 I've mentioned, did they violate government-mandated policies? Now, when they ask questions like this, when I say they, I mean Q+. When they ask questions like this, of course, the answer is sort of known. Maybe it's a technicality. I know some people have a hard time with that too. But whatever the case is, those pesky facts technically get in the way sometimes. So did these orders violate government-mandated policies? Yeah, I think they did. I'm pretty sure they did. Would a jury of peers agree their actions were reckless? Well, I don't know. If you're that person that draped that thing down over the bridge in New York that said, Cuomo killed my mother. I think we've all seen that image before, at least once. I've used it a couple times. Now, was it him directly? Well, he made decisions that directly impacted people that were in long-term care facilities and people that were in these homes where older, sicker people tend to be. So that's interesting. Would a jury of peers agree their actions were negligent? In spite of all the information they had available to them, in spite of the fact that they had facilities that were being opened up, New Jersey was building a hospital that got done, I think, before this choice was made. New York had that ship came in, the Hope or whatever the one was, the Red Cross ship, right? That had hundreds of beds, 750 beds or something like that. These people had other options available. California, Cuomo, down in LA, had a ship parked there. I'm sure if it needed to be in San Francisco, that's where it would have been, but LA made the most sense. Again, they had options available to them. And I know that ship, I think, sailed up from San Diego, so it's not like it even had to go that far. It was like roughly 90 miles as far as driving, 70 miles as far as driving goes. So all of this does not bode well for the bigger picture. So where did this come from? The Twitter account from House Republicans. These governors are withholding information from the public, and House Dems are letting them get away with it with their partisan refusal to join our investigation. Republicans are demanding answers from Dem governors about their disastrous nursing home orders. A long thing in here, and we've talked a bunch about it. Now, one thing about this, I'm going to be totally honest, guys. It bothers me a teeny tiny bit, and I'm hoping it's just optics and trying to get attention to this cause. But the fact that we got House Republicans going, wah, we can't make them do, it's like, who? You're the ones that are supposed to be able to freaking do this, man. Come on. Do something. Whatever your legalese is, whatever little magic you would file your paperwork, whatever the crap you got to do, whatever pen you got to pull out of a box, it's got fancy writing on it, and you sign some crap, then do it. Don't particularly care how hard it is. But I get there's a war kind of going on right now. So some of what they're pointing out that's kind of interesting that came from this, there's a second link. And it talks about the immunity of states from lawsuits. Now, there was the 11th Amendment, which talks about the judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to the extent to any suit in law or equity commenced or persecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state or by citizens or subject to any foreign state. Basically, you can't sue states and the government. Damn, it's a simple answer, right? 11th Amendment. So, it's not an 11th Amendment activity. And there's this other side that comes into play. There's the injunctions versus mandamus. Now, I could go off on a tangent here as well. I'm not gonna, but I looked into this for you law people, and you guys know this crap way better than me, so I'm not gonna pretend I don't, but there's all sorts of stuff that comes into play. Now, that all being said, all taken into account, one thing that actually holds true is two separate cases that actually, well, two examples. One's a case. There was a case where, I think it was Maryland even, that an individual working for the state tried to make it mandatory to change the rate that railroad industries had to charge. And so the railroad industries basically sued this dude and said, this ain't fair because you're trying to do something that could be damaging to our business and actually cause us harm. And that's not cool. And the way it was found was that this individual was acting on behalf of the state and utilizing the power of the state or holding the control of the state, the responsibility for the state. He was actually essentially guilty of trying to do something that he wasn't supposed to do or would actually cause harm to another. So it was deemed not okay. So there's definitely cases in the past where you can sue an individual that's representative of the state because as an ambassador for that state, they made a poor decision that was actually detrimental to the people that they've taken an oath to defend. That makes sense. That's the long story short on all this. Now, they're going to use all this. The immunity of a state from suit has long been held not to extend to actions against state officials for damages arising out of willful and negligent disregard of state laws. The reach of the rule is evident in Schuer E. versus Rhodes. I mean, again, we could go on the whole thing. Basically, what they're saying, hop on qalerts.app. That's where you can see all the different posts. I don't own this site, but it is one of the places to see links. It's one of the places where I've also recently realized it's probably not a good idea for us to share links in all the different places because who might see them? But that all being said, there is some discussion around the potentiality of possibly suing these individuals, and that'll get them into court. So don't think for 1 second, especially where my little crying, they won't listen to us. They actually have something to say. So again, the first place I went was, why are you guys whining? This is your job. Then I realized, oh yeah, they got little things they can sign with their fancy pens. All right, cool, good. So I think we're getting a hint where that's going. Post 4530, rising to the occasion. This is actually really cool in a lot of ways, and it spawned a second tweet. That's actually very cool. And I'm going to borderline ruin it right now, but I'm going to give kudos to the individual that gets called out on the second post. And it's pretty cool how it's played out. But they actually call out this Ellen Nook, or Enoch is how typically the channel is. And Enoch's in this community posts a lot of really, really cool stuff. She also has a very cool YouTube channel, I guess. I checked it out. It's like the news lines of the day, and she does one every day. It's very short, and she just reads some really cool headlines. And it's interesting. I looked at 5 different days. There were some very interesting headlines that were in there. Don't want to get off on the weeds too much. But this is Enoch, was what she's talking about. But what's really cool is when you start scrolling down, you see constant different people taking the oath. This is that oath. I swear I'll do the yada yada, right? This is all these people taking the oath. She's getting kudos because of how many people posted the oath on her channel. I'm just scrolling. That's what the dude that got credit for this next, and I'll share him. That's what all these dudes are doing. I swear to God, she looks like an alien from another planet, but a very attractive one I'll add to. But anyways, I can still watch her all day. That being said, lots of examples. He knows how many examples there are. So, Enoch, you're awesome. Thank you for your 25.5K tweets. Ellen Knuckle or Nokel, I think she's Asian possibly, but I don't really know for sure. But super cool. And her channel got some very similar. Just an example what her News Blast channel's about. I seriously, hit the links at the qalerts.pub. But there's some very cool stuff that shows up in here. I'm trying to see if I can find the one. Oh, one thing, I'm just going to say this real quick, and this is the main reason why I even jumped to this slide at all, to show her channel, was that the 200th judge approved under the Trump admin happened on this particular day, the 24th. And then also, the 200th mile of border wall was built on the 24th. And one thing that jumped out at me, I want to say it was the 19th. I'm hoping I'm getting that right. Yeah. So July 19th is the 200th day of the year. Kind of made me wonder if there's any significance to that day. I'm throwing it out there. I'm not saying something is. I'm just wondering because 200 seemed kind of interesting. And it made me wonder. I'm like, oh, what's the 200th day of the year? I'm curious. So the 19th, I don't know, something to keep on your mind. Another thing that's kind of interesting that kind of ties into a lot of stuff, I feel like, I don't know if that was part of this or not, or if it's just the rabbit hole I ended up in, but it's certainly interesting. A bunch of different brands are pulling ads from Facebook right now. You've probably heard this over hate speech, right? So Facebook's majorly being attacked right now for not basically censoring enough, I think, which is kind of interesting. But it's weird that some of the companies that are literally pulling their ads, and we're talking millions, many millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. Birchbox, just shy of $1 million. Coca-Cola, $22 million. Diageo, I don't know. Eddie Bauer, $1.4 million. Honda, $6 million. Levi Strauss, $2.8 million. Lululemon, $1.6 million. The North Face, $3.3 million. Patagonia, $6.2 million. REI, $22.5 million. Starbucks has to be insane. Unilever, $42.4 million. Verizon, $22.9 million. What's going on? Seriously, this is one thing I wonder about because this is one of the crazy places that we're not supposed to trust anyway. And these people are pulling ads like mad because Facebook isn't playing by the rules. Is Facebook trying to play by the rules, or is Facebook maybe being taken over in a different kind of way? Are they being pressured and forced to basically open their doors a little more, or else? And so they're kind of suffering the repercussions, and this is how it happens. Again, something to keep an eye on. But this was out of the New York Times. Some people consider that a useful news source. Some people, other than me. But in this case here, I am using it. And I don't know why Warriors for Humanity. I just like the fact that she's like, children are the light and they need to swallow the red pill. And this really kind of got me into, it just went down a rabbit hole, folks. That's really what happened. But the next few weeks, Post 4531 are going to demonstrate our resolve. It's really important, kind of what we continue to do. And again, these posts, these people taking the post is super cool. We're going to share this one just because it's a young lady. It was funny when I first pulled up this thing, it said that she's not necessarily, you can't show all the comments. And it's like, wow, you got to figure she probably got some hellaciously bad comments. And I will say there's a lot of people that when you come out on your channel where you maybe had friends a little bit ago that were of the left, and then find out that you're on the right, it is really surprising how they hate you. You're like, well, I don't hate anybody in my life. Holy crap, they found out that I don't hate Trump, and whoa, all of a sudden they went after me. So anyway, let's take a gander.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter, so help me God. Where we go one, we go all.
Now, a lot of great things came up about her, and it's funny, so many anons that we're posting on the board. We're just talking about how hot she is. Again, that's not any sort of anything, but it is funny because she's a very attractive lady. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But again, where we go one, we go all. Folks, we're all in this together. We've got all sorts of different people that are putting themselves out on the lines as well to actually let the people that haven't awoken yet, let them know that there are leaders. Those of us that are doing this before others, and yeah, some of us hopped on the bandwagon later than others, it doesn't really matter. Are you on the bandwagon now? Cool, you're one of us, right? And I don't mean it's an us, them. I mean, you're part of this group of people that are leading the way. You're showing others how to do the same thing. And again, I want to reiterate, it's so important to extend an olive branch to people that start waking up, that maybe you're on the left, that maybe you are confused. Use facts. Share these facts. Help people understand what's actually going on. Don't fill their heads with mumbo jumbo like they're used to getting, but help them start to come to this critically thinking sort of way of looking at life. Help them start to assess things for themselves. It'll make a huge difference. 4532. This one's kind of funny, little post. One, it's very poetic. So the likelihood that there is a little hidden gem in this is probably true. The likelihood that it's what Q calls out is, of course, probably true. But how subtle it is interesting. But yet it still gets called out. So I don't know. Maybe it was because it was already past the point and it already accomplished what it wanted. You're wondering what I'm talking about? Let me help you with this. And believe me, it'll make sense in a moment. Maybe, sort of. Post 4532. As the darkness falls, so does our enemies, is the post that Q made. Now, someone gives Q a little bit of crap. They say, whoa, Grammar Kitty, or was that on purpose? And he goes, yes, mistakes to you are roadmaps to others. Little bitchiness read in there intentionally, right? Maybe it wasn't meant to be, or maybe it was, because there's definitely a lot of people on the boards that suspect that Q gets a little gripey, and shared a bunch of examples where he gets a little upset when people kind of rip on his grammar. But that being said, a lot of other people are like, wait, what did I miss? ES? Huh? What it was is apparently this word here, and if you really look at it, my brain read it fine, because I am not Mr. Grammar, and I am not Mr. Spelling. These are just two things that my brain is fine just running past and doesn't really care. But that is actually the incorrect word. As the darkness falls, so does our enemies is actually incorrect. It's as the darkness falls is a present tense, does is past. It doesn't really work. You're switching tenses. So it should be as the darkness falls, so do our enemies. This is where the grammar police showed up at Q's doorstep. Woo, you used does and you shouldn't have. Q's like, shut up. And I did it on purpose. So, I don't know. The one thing that jumped out that maybe ES meant was Eric Schmidt. Not sure what's going on. Not sure if he was trying to cue him. My guess is if literally this was good enough to cue anything, they've got a grammar checker that's got to be in there. Because typically when he does a misspell on purpose, he'll capitalize or something the letters that are inappropriate to make it obvious. But he didn't this time. It wasn't obvious. This was hidden. This is someone that you'd have to actually get the little green underlines or whatever the heck color it does in your program that would say, hey, that's wrong. So there must be some sort of software that's looking for these grammatical mess ups, and then someone's able to look at it and say, what's wrong with this word? And from that, make an assessment. So possibly Eric Schmidt is being called out. Now, this guy's got some background. One, he was part of the alphabet agencies. I think he left, in 2011? And then this whole thing about getting paid $1, and I think it's because he was on the board. Whatever. But supposedly, recently, he started a new position as a technical advisor on science and technology back in 2020. I don't know if I can find this real quick. Might not be able to. We'll see where he's ending up here if I can find it on the fly. So CNET this morning reported that Eric Schmidt is no longer at the Alphabet after leaving his technical advisor in science position as of February 2020. Oh, sorry, as of that point, he left. So not sure where he's at. Not sure if this is just one of the many CEOs that are falling by the wayside, or if there's a call out potentially because maybe he's going to help us. Maybe he's a whistleblower. Maybe, I don't know. Again, does, ES, who knows? Again, 4534, got a great little Twitter that is shared with us here, and stand by the ready. Now, this is the person that I wanted to give some kudos. This MAQI 5ER, Mike Queefer, maybe Ma Queefer. I don't know what they're trying to spell in there. I've learned you can do all sorts of crazy stuff that way, so I don't know. But he says, understand why the entire Ellen Nokel account, or Enoch account, and not a single tweet was tagged in the QAnon drop. And again, he's pointing out the same thing. Like when you watch this and just look at the, let's see if I can load this on the fly, but if you just, again, he's just scrolling through. This is just him scrolling through all the stuff that was on that channel, kind of like what I did. And I think he was just taking all of them and just removing all the little blocks in between. So again, great call out on his part. So again, that was post 4534. We're going to really quick take a little gander and just see if by chance, 4535. So we've got one new one that's popped in here. Let's go ahead and just single this bugger out and let's jump on it. So a person's value, or a person, so what's a person worth, I guess, to the government? It's my guess right off the bat. First, we're a vote, so that's important. Kind of make sure we vote and do our thing, right? But that's really one thing that matters to us is if we can be manipulated properly, then we'll vote according to the way they want us to. So, okay, monetary value, so tax contribution. That's the other thing that people see us as. Other than useless eaters, they actually do see us as conceptually bringing money to the table. And again, it kind of, for those of you that have seen the whole Matrix concept, it's that that humans are batteries, that we actually produce so many watts of energy per day, and then the machines are just basically using us as batteries, right? And then we just have our little pretend world that we live in and jerk around inside of our little sloshy, viscous goo that we live in, right? And there you go. That's life, right? So monetary value, battery, however you want to look at it. Number 3, why is free thought ridiculed, challenged, and threatened when a person is opposed on a mainstream narrative? Right? That's the problem. I'm assuming they don't have a third thing. where value stops at 3. We got 2 values. Outside of that, we got no more value. But why is free thought ridiculed, challenged, threatened when a person is opposed to mainstream narrative? Literally, all you got to do is just disagree with what they say, and you are an enemy. So they 2 remains fixed or degree allowable by economic recession expansion. Remains a variable dependent on a controlled system of information disinformation or dissemination. What happens when 90% of the media is controlled, owned by 6 corporations? Obviously, you get a very similar bit of information. Again, Fox is guilty of this frequently. They tend to favor the right because otherwise no one would watch it. And there's, by the way, only one channel really for the right. So that's why Fox does really, really well as a network compared to CNN, NBC, and MSNBC, and CBS. You've got 3 networks that are splitting the rest of the market. So you've got a bunch of people that are basically right-leaning, center-leaning, and can't stand the left, or at least it's tougher to watch that media. And then you got all the people on the left that would not watch Fox if that was the last friggin' channel on earth. And so, yeah, they're splitting between the other 3 networks. So that's why when you look at ratings, Fox tends to do not quite 3 times as well as the others, but tends to do really well and proportionately so. But again, it's kind of a weird set of numbers. But that all being said, what happens when 6 companies own all the news? What happens when those same corporations are operated and controlled by a political ideology? Just wink, wink. Hey, guess where this is leading us? What happens when the news is no longer free from bias? What happens when the news is no longer reliable and independent? What happens when the news is no longer trustworthy? What happens when the news simply becomes an extension or arm of a political party? Fact becomes fiction, fiction becomes fact. We can make up whatever we want, right? I mean, that's, again, you knock down the history like I was talking about. This really came at a perfect time to wrap up my whole start. But really, once you change history, I can start to rewrite things as I want. So when does news become propaganda? Identity creation. How does the average person, who is under constant financial stress, by design, of course, find time to research and discern the fact versus the fiction? A lot of time, a lot of effort to do this. We've got people that fortunately have nothing better to do, and thank God that's the case. The majority of people are more prone to believe someone in power is sitting behind a big brand news name. So there's someone in power sitting behind a big brand news name. Oh, that there's people that are supporting these different news agencies. Do people, human psyche, tend to follow the majority mainstream viewpoint in fear of being isolated and shunned? Think about how the herd works. Think about how hard it is for us to step out and take this oath. How hard is that for us when we take that oath? Because it puts us out there, breaks us from the herd, and all of a sudden, now we're in danger. Now we're at risk of being ridiculed or attacked. I mean, that's why there's the safety of the herd. When you get thousands and thousands of fish in a school and a shark comes in, well, the fact that all these fish can move together gives you, as an individual fish, a very strong chance of survival, while your buddy fish that you just punch into the gills, slow them down a little bit, is the one that's going to get eaten by the shark. So again, busting away from the herd is very, very difficult from a psychological standpoint. The human psyche. That's why they use that technique to attack us. Peer pressure. Yeah, everyone's doing it. Well, I'm not, so I guess everyone's not. If everyone jumped off a bridge, would you do it? That's what our parents said to us when I was younger. Mainstream is used for a reason, because it's a dominated trend of opinion. So when you say mainstream, it means if you're not on board with the mainstream, you're off of the mainstream, you're wrong. You're out of sync. So if a majority of the people believe X, then X must be valid or true. But really, that's not reality. We all know that because we've kind of red-pilled or whatever, or we just happen to fall on side Y. But just because we feel the same way doesn't mean we're validated true either. Truth really tends to fall in the middle of the two sides. Is kind of how it typically works out. But who is truly coordinating all of this? Some outside entity providing instructions, possibly? Now, the fact that they're asking this pretty much leads us to the fact that, yeah, almost guarantee that's what's happening. Do they count on the fact that people, the human psyche, are more prone to believe something if it's heard over and over by different trusted sources? Figure out how the mainstream media works. All right, so even on Fox, they'll say the same headlines, the same thing, the same, Trump just said by anonymous sources that he just punched a baby, right? And then you'll hear it on the same exact thing on NBC, and you'll hear the same exact thing on CNN, and they'll talk about it all day long, the same thing. So most of our minds figure, oh my God, it's said on two channels. It's obviously true because we were programmed to trust multiple sources. When we wrote papers in school, if you used multiple sources, it was okay. Well, CNN said so, the New York Times said so, and I also found this book. All right, it's true. Now, granted, if you brought in a book, there's a cool chance, but if that book was written by, I don't know, whatever that guy's name that's currently running around with his book tour that sold secrets to the government, just saying. So again, it's interesting how these things work. Do echo chamber tactics provide validation, credibility to the topic or point being discussed? Is it a threat to intellectual freedom? Again, you're not allowed to think and ask questions anymore. Would control over or of these institutions or organizations allow for mass control of populations' viewpoints regarding a desired topic? Meaning, if I had 5 different news channels that 80% of all my viewers watched, and I made sure it said the same basic thing on all those channels, then rest assured those 80% of the population are going to believe that. At least a good, huge chunk of that 80% are going to believe it. Is that a threat to intellectual freedom? Yes. Are we ridiculed for thinking? Yes. Would control of these things mess us up? Yes. So again, all of this is huge. Understand how deep this rabbit hole goes, how the control of these organizations goes, how when people ban Facebook and you've got major organizations that stop spending millions of dollars to force people to behave a specific way. Would control over these things affect that? Think BLM pushed every 4 years, right? Summertime before every single election, they've pointed out on that graph we've seen over and over. Keep having this spike, keep having some sort of rally, some sort of riot, some sort of public shooting that happens that causes a huge problem. Again, logical thinking. How would you play this out if you were the one trying to work against the government? This is not the longest ass post. Why after the election of 2016 did the Dems and MediaCorp jumpstart a coordinated and planned decisive blitz intended to create falsehoods regarding illegitimacy of election, character assassinations of the POTUS through sexism, racism, and every other ism, right? How many people say he's racist, but you could pull up all sorts of different pictures of Donald Trump hanging out with everybody of every color under the sun in every sort of way. I even saw a roast where they were roasting Donald Trump. Donald Trump went on a roast show. This guy can take more crap than anybody. Thank God, for that matter. But again, everyone wants to call him all sorts of names, but man, I think he stands way more true than Biden. Biden's like, if you don't vote for me, you're not black. Really? And you've got the worst crime bill that's affected the black community, like horribly? Really? Again, not my fight to have per se, but it's like, wow. So how much of the population still believes POTUS colluded with Russia due to the MSNBC 365 blitz? I heard them talking about it this morning on the news. That's it. Everyone's still saying he's friendly with Russia. He's friendly with Russia. It's like, wait, what about those of you friendly with China? China owns this country, is stealing from this country, is taking our intellectual property from this country, is bringing students into our schools so they can steal property that way. Not just the potentiality of infusing their crazy beliefs into our policies via the bribes they've done to our politicians. Oh, No MSNDC, or no MSDNC, sorry, retraction of POTUS Russia collusion narrative propaganda. Why? Why have they not pulled it back? It's not true. It's been proven to not be true. They couldn't prove it, but they never pulled back on it. In fact, they still bring it up from time to time. Pre and post 2016 elections. Why were our violent masked terror orgs such as Antifa immediately created, funded, and allowed to operate within the decontrolled cities or have these safe zones? Why are these people able to cause all the problems they are? Why do people let it happen, first off? Why were these orgs tasked with immediate and intimidation shutdown of any pro-POTUS rallies and or events? Isn't that what they're for? Now, again, one of the cool things that's been coming up is a lot of these guys are getting arrested for extended periods of time, certainly 10 years for messing up statues and stuff, and they're busting a lot of these main people. And again, they've been following Antifa going back a while. Q was posting about this many, many months ago. They knew about this back in midterm 2018 elections. They dialed it in pretty solid then. These people are ending up in jail because they're the organizers. When you take the organizers out of the mix, stuff doesn't seem to happen as poorly as often, or at least it becomes a lot more difficult. So, some of the things that are happening. So, why were marches immediately organized to counter and silence pro-POTUS rallies and or events? Again, can't have anything that's positive for the POTUS. All of this stuff that's happening right now has to hurt him or else, right? There is all about the election. This is all about November 3rd. Why were these marches immediately organized, which divided people into sex, gender, racism, and everything else? When you control the levers of news dissemination, you control the narrative. Control of the narrative equals power. Now, what has truly happened over the past number of weeks/months is this Q narrative has taken on a great deal of power. And that is why we have entered the crosshairs for them. We scare the crud out of them because we are starting to control the narrative, and it is bothering them a lot. So when you are blind, what do you see? Maybe light and dark, that's about it, I think. They want us divided. They want us divided on religion, race, sex, political affiliation, class, color, creed, what color underwear you like to wear. They're going to bust you on anything they can and make you feel bad. You like wearing tighty whities, gross. Oh, you like wearing boxers? Ew. Whatever it is that you choose is not going to be okay. When you are divided and angry and controlled, you target those indifferent from you, those different from you, not those responsible. So again, when you're mad at the people that are making society jacked up, what a lot of these people are doing is reaching out and attacking just regular citizens. It's like, it's not my fault. Like, they're yet mad at white people because of things that happened 150 years ago. It's like, it's not necessarily me. And we're not the Democrats that have been controlling that side of the political party since the Civil War and before. That's not us. Get mad at the right people. Don't get mad at people that are just fellow citizens. Again, when we're divided, then we're easy to control. So divided, we're weak. Divided, we pose no threat to their control. When non-dogmatic information becomes free and transparent, it becomes a threat to those who attempt to control the narrative and or stable livestock kept, i.e. sheep or sheeple, I'm pretty sure is what they say. The narrative works for the sheeple. If the narrative gets taken over, then the sheeple start to go and look at the new narrative. The sheeple aren't smart enough to go, no, the old narrative's wrong. That's what that meant. I don't know if you speak sheep, but that was the first part was, oh, new narrative? Right? The question? No. It's what we tell you. It's what we keep telling you. Oh, okay. And that's the thing. The sheep are confused because they're not sure which narrative is right, because we're taking ownership of the narrative. We're taking it away from them. Divided, we are weak, but when they're divided, they're weak. So when these non-dogmatic information becomes free and transparent, again, it's going to help the sheeple. When you are awake, you stand on the outside of the stable groupthink collective, and you have a free thought. And when you can stand outside the sheep, when you can stand outside the flock, you have the ability to see things from a little bit different perspective. And that perspective is life-changing. You will never go back. It's that whole red pill concept, is my opinion, is the second you're able to break free from the herd, is the second the red pill really kicks in and you start to realize how messed up stuff is. You start to see all the speakers that are just blasting on the sheep, telling them crazy, stupid things. You're like, oh my God, there's this whole thing that's organized to keep people down. And then you watch it weaponized to get people to fight with each other. And then you watch people actually fight with each other. Free thought is a philosophical viewpoint which holds that positions regarding truth should be formed on the basis of logic, reason, and empiricism, rather than authority, tradition, revelation, or dogma. Again, we're trying to do this with logic, reason, and actual empirical data, actual data, rather than just a bunch of thoughts. Calling people names, we've always done it this way, this is the way it's supposed to happen, whatever. The way things happen is through elections. The way things happen is through people voting to take a statue down, or as they did in places where the Confederate flag was being flown. Through legal means and through the office, they voted to remove those items, and they've been removed. That is how you change the government. That is how you change our country. You don't wrap ropes around a statue and yank it down. It's not how we work here. We have rules, we have laws, we have process, and people have a right. And as we take this planet back, or at least our country back, from the people that have been holding us hostage, we will begin to build this future that I think we all desire and that we can all have. This represents a clear and present danger to the constitutional republic of the United States, the stuff that is going on. We're in a very difficult time right now. We're in a very challenging time right now as a country. And the best of those of us that are awake is being asked. It's being asked of us. We need to be the bigger people. We need to be the responsible people. And we certainly need to stand our ground and stand outside the herd and certainly understand the herd still needs to be protected. But we also need to understand that we're no longer in the herd and we're no longer part of those rules. And although they might want to call you names, it's just them calling you a name. It's a sheep going, meh. That's all it is. Sticks and stones, right? It's not going to hurt. Stand our ground, use facts, empiricism, yada, yada, right? The whole 9 yards. And let's stand our ground. Let's fight for this country that we love and hold dear. Let's be kind to our fellow man. And let's make a difference. It's time to shine. Every single one of us is stepping up to the plate right now, tapping the dirt off your cleats, tapping the plate to make sure you can reach it, pulling that back bat and getting ready to take a pitch. Because it's time. Where we go one, we go all. It's on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle.